Hello, this is Jeff Byers. This is Module 3, and this is part 2 of the lighting, getting the lights set up, and now we're just kind of tweaking out the lights. And what I want to do next is once I have my key light, my fill light, and my backlight, and I've got my HDR image in there. So please watch part 1 of this maybe 3-part series. So what we need to do now is once the lighting is set up, we need to check it and make sure it's rendering properly. So I'm going to go into the render settings. Okay. So you can go into the render settings this way. You can go to modeling or go into rendering, and you can find it up here. Render settings. You can also find it that way. But it's the guy with the little icon with the clapper board and it looks like a gear. Make sure Arnold Render is on. Okay. And if you don't see it there, you'll have to go in there, go to Windows, Settings, Preferences, Plugin Manager, and then load it that way. Okay. Click on Arnold Render. Now this is set up at the highest resolution. So if you want to look at this, this is set up for portfolio rendering. Okay. Normally it's set something like this. It's set up at 3, 2, 2, 2, and 2, and then we've got 10 on here, 2 here, 2 here, something like that. I mean, it's something like this, and that's kind of what it's set up. Maybe if it's even lower than this. But the idea is that we just need a quick render just for the lights. So a lot of times I'll do this really low. It may look a little bit weird, but it'll render way faster. Okay. In the Commons tab, I'm asking for, we're not doing an animation. I'll have this as an extra credit and show you how to do that in a different video. But this should be set up at HD 1080. Okay, just click on the arrow and just find it, HD 1080. And that's about it for that part. So the Commons tab is set up. Okay, you're looking through the right camera, right? Alright, so Arnold set up here, Commons set up here. And so what we're going to do is we're going to kind of take you through how to get this lighting set up. I gave you a good start by showing you what I did for my intensities and how I got these things set up. And there's the lighting tutorials out there that kind of take you really deep into Arnold. But right now, I just want to get you up and going. I usually get into Arnold pretty deep with my introduction to 3D animation and game art course. So I usually take you through that, and most of the time it's just tweaking and introducing you to like HDR images and whatnot. So now we're going to get into, once we get that done, now we're going to go into trying to find and trying to get this looking nice from all angles. Okay, so I'm going to go into Arnold. Let's go into Arnold here for rendering, and let's click on this render tab here. Alright, so let's go in here. I've got pretty big. There we go. This may take a while. We have it a very large space here. 1080 is pretty big for just setting things up. Alright, so I'm going to go back into the render settings and go to my Commons tab and turn this down to HD 540. And I'm going to go ahead and go to Arnold and do another render here real quick. There we go, that's much faster. Okay, that looks better. Let me get this window a lot smaller if I can. Camtasia is really slowing me down here. My recording. There we go. Get that smaller so we can kind of see side by side what's going on here. Alright, so usually when we're just starting out with our lighting, You can see that hopefully this will update. There we go. Now it's updating, I think. There it is. So now we can kind of see an update of what our lighting looks like, which is kind of cool in Arnold. Okay. Alright. Alright, so let's get that position. Let me look at the back here and see what we can do there. Okay. So you can see we have some dark areas here we need to work on. Okay. This is how you can get started. Kind of see where you're at and find your position that you want to create. A nice little rendering. Okay. Alright, so I'm going to turn this off and then close that. Now, for the camera, I'm just moving around just to kind of do a, just kind of, when I'm doing my lecture here, I like to have two different. One is going to be my perspective. That's what I'm actually going to render. And then I've got one that I can move around in. So I usually set up my workflow is setting up two cameras, one that I can just move around in, get my lighting looking good, and the next one is just what my camera is set up, what I'm actually going to render, okay, my scene. So, alright, so let's go into, let me open up my HDR image again. That was not on before. That's probably why it was so dark. So I'm going to give it, I have that turned on now. So now I'm going to go in here. Now how did I get this? Well, I go and I click on this guy right here, which is resolution gate. And then I click on this guy that's right next to it. So this is a resolution gate. And this one is the gate mask, so I have those both turned on, and that's what I get this. And that way I can kind of get my, we need a front perspective, okay? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and render this out at full render. And the render is off to the side, so just hang on. You can get a good look at it. Okay. Right, that wasn't too bad. It was pretty fast, and that's what it looks like. Okay, and you can see that the hair is a little bit too bright in some certain areas, but it looks really good. I think the lighting looks way better than it did before. Let's go ahead and take the render view out. Okay, that's my render view. Okay. Now the body's going to look a little bit different because I've got a subsurface scatter on the skin, and skin tends to be a little harder to control. Okay, so what I like to do is when I do my really quick renders, you can see they're really dirty looking. Okay, so but they're fast. So I'm going to click on this guy right here to pipe that in, and any changes I make to these lights will make a change in the render, and that will allow me to see it if I do another quick render. So let's say, if just for dramatic reasons here, I'm going to click on that light, and I'm going to go into the light settings and just basically turn off emit diffuse and emit specular, or actually just turn off this illuminates by default. That basically turns the light off. So if I do that and I render it out, it should render fairly quickly. It's going to compute that. You can see this is what it does. I'm going to go ahead and click on that guy and move this little slider back and forth. So you can see that makes a huge difference. That's the light on, that's with the light off. Okay? So the next thing I'm going to do, I'm going to turn this fill light off. Okay, I'm going to turn that off. Okay, so now I've got this in there. So I'm going to basically take that image and put it into cache. Okay, so you can see the difference between the two. And I'm going to render it again. This helps me see what the lights are actually doing in the scene. Okay? And how they're helping the scene. Alright? And what I need to do with textures and how to manipulate those textures. Because textures, a lot of times the lights are fine, but the textures are too shiny, they're too reflective. And those are things you have to think about. Okay? So that hair could be, I've got both of those lights off. Now there's one more light that I need to turn off. Okay? So I pipe that in, cache that in, and so now I've got the fill light off, the fill light is on, and the key light is on. So you can see that I'm start with this, and I'm turning the lights off. And I haven't found the lights that's causing that really bright hair, so I'm assuming it's this little guy right here. So I'm going to turn that one off. Okay. And now I'm going to go ahead and render the scene one more time. And see if that's the culprit. If that's not the culprit, then I need to turn down the reflectivity of the hair. Okay, so that light is turned completely off now. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and pipe that in. You can see that there's not much of a difference here. So it must be the hair texture. So because this intensity is set at 1. Now what if I turn that off? What do you think will happen? Let's go ahead and turn that off. Okay. So basically what I've done is I turn this light off by the intensity at 0 and exposure at 0. So if I go back into my render, that's not my render. There it is. I go back to my render and render this out. Now we have everything is black. There's nothing in there. Okay, so let's turn this back on. I think we had it at 1, and this was set at 1. There we go. So it's the hair. Alright, the hair's too shiny. So let's go into my hair shader, and you can see my IOR is set at 2.822. That's way too high. That's very shiny. My roughness is pretty flat, but it's very shiny. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to bring that down, not to 1, because I wouldn't have any shiny at all. I'm going to do 1.2. Okay. Alright, let's take a look. And so now let's bring everything back up again. So let's go ahead and bring this back up to, let's turn that back on. Let's turn this back on and turn this back on, and then now we're ready to render it out. So let's go ahead and render. It looks like I think I turned it off, so let's go ahead and render another one. So now I've got everything back on again for a nice image, and you can see that's way better than it was. Okay. Now if I wanted to flatten that totally out, I could. Okay, I could totally flatten that out, the hair out, or flatten or diffuse or roughness out a little bit more. But that's way better than it was. If I pipe that in, you can see the differences between what I had. So now the hair looks a lot better. Okay. So those are things that we got to think about when we're doing lights. That it may not be the lighting looks good on the body. The lighting may look fine, but there's super highlights in certain areas, and that could actually be the material that's reflecting the light. So you just gotta have that in the back of your mind, that when you're doing lighting, it may not be the lighting, it may be the material that's on the object. And you're gonna learn that the hard way by smacking your head against the wall trying to figure out lighting. Okay, so if you need more lights in your scene, more power to you. Go for it. We still have some dark areas, but I need to we're at a good point now where I want to see what this looks like at full resolution. Okay? Alright, so that's really important to me. So I'm going to do we're going to do some more renders, and I'm going to pause the video. Okay, so now I've got now I'm moved up to 720p, and you can see that my render settings are set up pretty high here. So if I go to Arnold Render, and you can see that I've got everything maxed out. It took a couple minutes to get it to render. Okay, but you can see my settings. You can pause the video. So this is my output, which is pretty good. I'm going to keep tweaking. I might even add another light in here, but be careful, like a directional light to fill in some of the areas here. Again, you can also tweak it out by maybe moving this around, okay, and seeing what kind of different results you would have with moving your HDR image around. Okay, these are things you can do as well to add more pop to your scene. Alright, so that's it for this video, and we'll come back and finish with the turntable animation.